And now we have Medicham. This zenned out yoga practicing meditation champion has been around since the 3rd generation. Through rigorous training, it developed the sixth sense, which was portrayed by the similarly buff Bruce Willis in the film of the same name. Today we'll see if Medicham's unagi did it any favors in the competitive scene. So we ask, how good was Medicham actually? And in this video, we'll be going over these competitive formats. Medicham had an interesting place in its debut generation. With its thoroughly below average stats, it seems like an unimpressive Pokemon to say the least. But then you see its ability Pure Power, whose effect is exactly what it sounds like. It doubles Medicham's attack stat, making it go from a paltry 240 to an absolutely monstrous 480. For reference, Slacking has a base 160 attack, and that clocks in at a 460 attack stat. The next strongest Pokemon in OU is a tie between Salamence and Metagross's 405 attack stat. This gives Medicham the highest attack in OU by some margin, and the second highest attack in the entire game, only behind Deoxys attack. Now, power isn't everything, obviously, and Medicham's other traits were fairly dismal. Its bulk was non-existent, and it didn't resist anything other than rock, which its frailty only allowed it to do once. This made it tough for Medicham to get on the field and make use of its massive attack. This meant that Medicham was high maintenance enough to never be a true OU Pokemon, especially since OU had the generally more reliable Heracross as its premier fighting type. Medicham was far too powerful to fit in UU though, so it placed in BL. However, unlike some other Pokemon that languish in that non-tier, Medicham could be used effectively in OU. It had a small yet fearsome niche in the tier, with Choice Band jacking up its already huge attack to simply shocking levels. Fighting Stab meant it threatened effortless one-hit KOs on metagame giants Tyranitar, Blissey, and Snorlax. It couldn't switch into them safely, but if its user was able to predict well and switch it in as the opponent switched to those Pokemon, Medicham would be in prime position to cause destruction. It had great coverage to deal with fighting resist too, not needing to rely on hidden power. Shadow Ball destroyed Gengar and did monstrous damage to Celebi and Claydol, while Rock Slide clobbered Zapdos, Salamence, and Moltres. It could also somewhat minimize prediction with Focus Punch. If the opponent had both a Shadow Ball target and a Rock Slide target, instead of choosing between them, Medicham could simply Focus Punch and do well over 50% to any non-Gengar resist. And if it did that much to resist, then just imagine how much it did to neutral targets. It did 80% minimum to max defense Suicune, was overwhelmingly favored to one-hit KO Swampert, and easily one-hit KO'd Skarmory and Metagross. Of course, Focus Punch was an inherently risky, prediction-reliant move in its own right, but using Medicham was already living on the edge. Plus, most players weren't eager to let their incredibly valuable Tyranitar or Blissey just drop to a Brick Break. Speaking of, Brick Break would 2-hit KO any neutral target. There was no using raw bulk from Swampert, Metagross, or Jirachi to deal with it. Some players eschewed Choice Band for a substitute set, making it less prediction reliant. It's not like Medicham was left wanting for power, especially since substitute removing prediction meant it was more easily able to land the right attack on the right target. This was also helpful against players who assumed Choice Band and attempted to scout its moves with Protect, as well as not getting worn down by the ever-present Sandstorm thanks to leftovers. Overall, Medicham was tougher to utilize than your average Pokemon, but the potential returns it brought when wielded skillfully were astonishing. Thanks to its stab that tore through much of the advanced metagame's best Pokemon, backed by Medicham's mind-boggling high attack stat. In Gen 4, Medicham wasn't able to eke out a niche in the 4th generation of OU, as there were too many great fighting types. Breloom and Machamp were significantly buffed, and new additions Infernape, Lucario, and Gallade were powerful, with Gallade specifically almost entirely outclassing Medicham. While Medicham was still stronger, Gallade had a better fighting stab in close combat, and Swords Dance to boost its attack, as well as a great special defense stat, and a colorful move pool blessing it with excellent coverage and even support options. Thus, Medicham dropped to UU, and this time around, it wasn't too much for the tier. As a matter of fact, the metagame naturally troubled it at every turn. The base 80 speed stat Medicham had was a severely crowded speed tier in UU, with several of the best Pokemon such as Venusaur, Kabutops, Mesprit, and Blaziken also there. Blaziken in particular was a problem because it was direct fighting type competition that boasted a far more useful secondary stab that meant, unlike Medicham, it wasn't walled by Psychics and Ghosts. All of Uxie, Mesprit, and Spiritomb completely owned Medicham, and Rotom and Mismagius weren't quite as guaranteed since they had to watch out for Zen Headbutt, but they generally stopped Medicham in its tracks easily as well, since they could switch into nearly all its attacks, outspeed, and one-hit KO it. This applied for much of the offensive metagame too, with Pokemon like Moltres and Scyther performing similarly. Medicham was able to break more balanced cores, relying on defensive Venusaur, Milotic, Registeel, Rhyperior, Chansey, and Clefable, and its powerful Fake Out was quite helpful against dangerous rain teams, but it was still immensely difficult to switch in safely, which made it a rather niche Pokemon in the grand scheme of things. It just struggled against too much to be anywhere near a consistently worthwhile choice. As a result, Medicham dropped to NU, and there it finally truly came into its own. It was one of the tier's most devastating Pokemon. While its speed left something to be desired against faster Pokemon like Charizard and Jinx, those faster Pokemon were absolutely not switching in, and while Medicham itself wasn't the easiest Pokemon in the world to switch in safely, so much of the NU meta consisted of slow Pokemon that it absolutely destroyed, such as Regirock and Licky, with many more Pokemon that would get 2-hit KO'd on the switch, such as Sandslash and Meganium, that it was worth trying to make Medicham work. The tier's go-to fighting resist, Slowking, got absolutely hammered by Thunder Punch. While Life Orb was Medicham's main set, it could even run Choice Band, either powering through the entire tier or tricking an annoying Hypno, Dusclops, or Slowking, giving it some flexibility and even potential for team support, as its teammates could make use of a tricked wall for easy setup. Overall, Medicham was one of NU's most devastating Pokemon. It required a specific blend of cautious and aggressive play, and if its trainer was capable, they would crush everything in sight. Game Freak went out of their way to load Gen 5 with incredible fighting types, and so Medicham never saw the light of day in OU or even UU, both tiers being known for their plethora of excellent fighters. It ended up in the tier below UU, though this time around that was the new RU. But unfortunately, Gallade was there as well, and this resulted in Medicham constantly being overshadowed, especially since Gallade had Swords Dance and as such was able to blow past Spiritomb, who completely countered Medicham, while also packing Night Slash to destroy another terrific Medicham answer, Uxie. Since Gallade had Swords Dance to boost its attack, it didn't need Life Orb, which in turn meant it could run Lumberry and not worry about status from Alomomola. Now, Medicham wasn't completely outclassed. The one thing it could do far better than Gallade was Choice Scarf. The immediate nature of the set required power to be used most effectively, and in that category, Medicham had Gallade beat by a mile. In addition to its gargantuan attack stat, it also packed a stronger fighting stab, as the 5th generation had buffed High Jump Kick to an astonishing 130 base power, which easily beat out Gallade's close combat. High Jump Kick powered through offense, smashing naturally bulky Pokemon like Escavalier and Entei, and was in fact so strong that it cleanly 2-hit KO'd offensive Moltres, who resists the move and is by no means frail. Even something as insanely bulky as Max Defense Tangrowth was 2-hit KO'd with Stealth Rock up, but Medicham certainly had its issues. Protect Alomomola, Ghost types, and bulky Psychic types were nothing to scoff at, but it could ruin nearly all of them by tricking its Scarf away, thereby making it solid in most matchups. Either it would mow down the opponent's frail Pokemon, or it would cripple a wall with Trick. Medicham wasn't the easiest Pokemon to fit on a team, given its well-known issues with getting onto the field that were mostly only solved via risky prediction, and it wasn't that fast. However, its Scarf set made it a reliable part of RU, and not just a functionally worse Gallade. In fact, Gallade wishes it could 2-hit KO one of the physically bulkiest Pokemon in the game, while having the Spade to outpace nearly the entire offensive metagame, like Scarf Medicham can. Generation 6 blessed Medicham with a Mega Evolution, which saw it crucially jump up to a solid 100 base speed stat. Most Pokemon with huge attack stats in the vein of Medicham are not blessed with very good speed stats, Medicham itself being a prime example. While 100 speed wasn't anything special for most Pokemon in Gen 6, Medicham wasn't most Pokemon, thanks to its sky-high attack, and by this standard it was blazing fast, given how the pool of Pokemon it could naturally outspeed and one-hit KO became much larger. The other boost Medicham got was a buffed base attack stat, jumping up to base 100, meaning it has a total 328 attack stat, with an adamant nature and maximum investment, which means that with pure power, it has a total 656 attack stat. And unlike most Pokemon who wanted to approach such a number, it wasn't restricted by Choice Band. Thanks to the lack of important targets it would hit with the speed it would get from a jolly nature, it was able to get the most out of its massive attack stat. Mega Medicham wasn't used much in the beginning of X and Y, since it was outclassed by the even better Mega Lucario and completely walled by Aegislash. But once those two were banned, it established itself as an absolutely monstrous threat. Now, it still had the same issues of not being able to switch in too safely and not being on the same level of speed as the more offensive metagame, but much of the metagame was slow and balanced, with Pokemon such as Clefable, Heatran, Ferrothorn, and Gliscor being among the most popular. Medicham still couldn't switch into them safely, but it didn't have to. Its teammates would, making use of U-turn and Volt Switch to get Medicham in freely. Rotom Wash was its best partner, and others like Tornadus T and Landorus T were terrific as well. From there, everything slower would be 2-hit KO'd, and everything faster would be 1-hit KO'd. So the opponent almost always had to sacrifice a Pokemon against Medicham. The exception was Mew, which was admittingly an annoyance, but Mew almost entirely disappeared once Oraz came around. Speaking of, several of the new Oraz Megas overshadowed Medicham at first. Lopunny was another high jump kick spamming fighting type that was incredibly fast and wasn't stopped by Ghost thanks to Scrappy, which was crucial because Mega Sableye came around and also walled Medicham. Mega Metagross and Mega Diancie were also premier offensive Megas that one-upped Medicham to boot. However, Medicham wouldn't be denied. Lopunny was great against offense, but it couldn't break the popular balance teams, whereas Medicham mowed through the Clefable and even Slowbro that hard-walled Lopunny. Mega Sableye was annoying but restricted to stall, which was dealt with in other ways. Mega Diancie was in for a nasty surprise when Medicham pulled out Bullet Punch, which also trounced revenge-killing attempts from Weavile and Scarf Tyranitar. The guaranteed extra hit alongside Fake Out meant Medicham was solid at finishing off weakened faster setup sweepers such as Volcarona and Mega Charizard X. Metagross remained Medicham's best competition, but Metagross wasn't able to fit all of the many moves it wanted to in its moveset, and as such struggled to absolutely maul the common balance teams like Medicham did with ease, thanks to High Jump Kick's brutal power that 2-hit KO'd even most variants of Clefable despite its resistance. Mega Sableye was also eventually banned, making Medicham even more effective. Now, Medicham still had its issues. For instance, some of its common targets, Heatran and Ferrothorn, sometimes ran Protect, making its high jump kick a lethal guessing game. However, for the most part, it was an absolute terror and helped define Gen 6 OU as one of the tier's most dangerous Pokemon. The common sentiment was that every time Medicham came in, it was time for the opposing player to select which Pokemon they would sacrifice to it. And thanks to Volt Switch and U-turn, Medicham was able to switch in effortlessly and often. Regular Medicham saw itself in the RU tier once again. And once again, it wielded a Choice Scarf set so as not to be outclassed by Gallade. It played pretty much the exact same way as in the previous generation. Spam High Jump Kick against offense, and when facing one of the same walls that had annoyed it in Gen 5 RU, such as Alomomola or Spiritomb, it would do the same thing it did then. Irrevocably ruined them by tricking its Choice Scarf away. However, the increase in Pokemon using Protect, such as Registeel, made this much harder for Medicham to pull off, and while it wasn't a bad Pokemon, it was significantly more niche this time around, though a smart player could still certainly get use out of it. Medicham may pack some of the strongest fake outs known to man, but that's one pro compared to a whole lot of cons. Medicham's frailty is a huge burden in VGC, and it's not going to win any awards for speed either. If you do want a fighting type with fake out, Hitmontop or Hariyama are often strictly better choices for the utility and bulk, with Hitmontop bringing a valuable Intimidate and Hariyama able to function exceedingly well in Trick Room teams. However, there's no matching Medicham's power, and with its Mega Evolution giving it a bit more speed and some additional support, it's able to potentially tear through teams in the right circumstances. Most Medicham teams packed either Tailwind or Screens, or very frequently both of them, to turn Medicham into a terrifying arsenal of destruction, which it was certainly capable of doing with its great coverage and power. If Medicham was outsped, it also had access to Bullet Punch to potentially deal with faster Pokemon. However, Medicham was still incredibly hard to pull off, and with its best move being the never reliable high jump kick, it didn't see too much play at high level. Nevertheless, there were still some scattered results. Firstly, Jonathan Mendoza was able to place 11th at the 2014 Long Beach Regionals, using Klefki, Aerodactyl, and Scizor to shore up Medicham's pure power. In Japan, 2 players took Medicham to the top 16 of the Arena Offline Battle Road Gloria qualifier. Masahiro, who used Talonflame for Tailwind support, and Iro, who used a Meowstic for his own support, on a team that interestingly enough consisted of all Psychic types. In Auckland, Patrick placed 12th by using his own Talonflame and a Mat Block Greninja to help Medicham set up. Medicham's only placement above regional level came credit of Jacob Hardenbauer, who brought it a 45th place finish at the US Nationals with an unorthodox squad featuring Crobat, Nidoking, Glaceon, Chandelure, and Yanmega. A cool team for sure, but you can see that Medicham had a hard time truly performing at the high level. Its fake out niche was already filled, and even the level of power that Medicham brought honestly wasn't worth bringing when its defenses were so low. Medicham continued to wreak havoc upon OU in Generation 7. It now ran a jolly nature thanks to its prominence of the dangerous Tapu Lele, as well as the popularity of fast Kyurem Black. But it was still a major powerhouse, and its feared high jump kick performing absurd feats like threatening to one-hit KO max HP Magirna. Medicham was just as impossible to safely switch into as before, and even received buffs in the form of terrains. Tapu Bulu's grassy terrain provided its passive recovery, making it difficult for Medicham to get worn down by spikes, and Tapu Fini's misty terrain provided its status immunity, which was excellent against Toxapex in particular. Being able to so thoroughly destroy these seemingly unkillable Toxapex was one of Medicham's finest qualities. However, by far the best terrain for Medicham was Tapu Lele and its psychic terrain, which boosted Medicham's Zen Headbutt to absurd levels of power, pulling off feats like one-hit KOing bulky pivot Tornadus T that could survive an ice punch. It was especially effective and spammable because Steel and Dark types didn't want to switch into it, since high jump kick would cut them down in a heartbeat. Volt Switch and U-turn were as effective as ever at bringing Medicham in safely, since on top of the usual suspects all being excellent once again, Tapu Koko and Assault Vest Magirna had joined the party as well. Medicham was even harder to switch into, since it was a lot easier to fit spikes onto its team, thanks to how good Greninja was, making pivoting around even resisted hits difficult, as their effect would really sting and allow one of Medicham's teammates to clean up later. Overall, Mega Medicham terrorized OU once more with its unique brand of wall breaking that was supported better than ever by some of the best Pokemon in the metagame. The same Pokemon that, if on the other side, Medicham specialized in crushing just like it had in the previous generation. As for regular Medicham, it was hit by Power Creep and dropped to NU, but there it was a terror. There was plenty of U-turn and Volt Switch support from top Pokemon such as Incineroar and Vikavolt, so getting Medicham onto the field was no problem despite its frailty. Once it was in, if it predicted well around the tier's ghost types Rotom, Dhelmise, and Decidueye, and didn't just high jump kick into them, it would almost always claim a KO. It would get worn down incredibly quickly between Life Orb and entry hazards, but it wasn't meant to be resilient. It was meant to punch huge holes in the opponent's defensive core, and that it did immensely reliably. Medicham could also run other sets, such as a bulk up set with Drain Punch and Thunder Punch, using Electrium Z for a massive Gigavolt Havoc that would destroy all Slowking, and the Scarf set was also a good choice for its ability to mow down fast offensive Pokemon like Heliolisk, while being able to cripple walls with Trick, but the Life Orb Wall Breaker's ability to crush everything made it Medicham's premier set. Overall, while it wasn't one of the faces of the metagame, there was no denying the fear Medicham inspired in trainers' hearts when they saw it in Team Preview. Medicham had one other notable result in its VGC history, and it came from a trainer perfectly suited to the no-holds-barred playstyle that Medicham thrived in. Australian Graham Ameti brought a hyper-offensive Mega Medicham team to the North American International Championships last year. The rest of Graham's team consisted of Nihilego, Tapu Koko, Tapu Lele, Primal Kyogre, and Lunala. That Lunala was the other most critical part of Graham's team. He would lead Mega Medicham and Lunala almost every single match, with Mega Medicham's fake-out pressure providing room for Lunala to set up its Tailwind or Roar against an opponent's Trick Room setup. Once Tailwind was up, Medicham and Lunala had incredible coverage together, with Medicham's attack being so massive that it was able to one-hit KO Incineroar with a high jump kick, even at -2. If the opponent read Medicham's attack and switched into a Ghost type, Lunala was able to easily dispatch it. Even Mimikyu, whose disguise was nullified by Moongeist Beam, or its powered-up Z version. And hey, if Medicham dies, Graham just has a free switch into his other heavy hitters. Medicham's purpose was to go out swinging and let Graham flex his Tailwind advantage either way, clearing a path for Primal Kyogre. Graham opted for a moveset of Fake Out, Bullet Punch, Poison Jab, and High Jump Kick. Fake Out was essential for his strategy, while Bullet Punch was important against other speedier Pokemon or opposing speed control, and Poison Jab was incredible coverage against Xerneas and the Tapus, and I don't think we really need to explain High Jump Kick. Graham's team quickly became a fan favorite as he tore through the tournament, making aggressive plays from the get-go. Graham managed to make it all the way to the finals against Wolf Glick, who was able to dispatch Medicham with his own Rayquaza and smart prediction, but Medicham had captured the hearts of the viewers. So talk about a one-hit wonder, as in it'll KO your Pokemon in one hit. So congratulations to Graham for his amazing placement at the NAIC with Medicham. And that's it. So how good was Medicham actually? Well, it's not very fast, and it has non-existent bulk, and its typing is near worthless defensively, making it famously difficult to get onto the field safely. However, once it has managed to do so, one realizes that it was all worth it, as their opponent can do little more but select which of their Pokemon they want to sacrifice to Medicham's obscene attack stat. There are very few Pokemon that can safely switch into it. Now, it wasn't much of a VGC Pokemon in the grand scheme of things, but neither are many singles titans. Overall, throughout its Poke career, Medicham has been the epitome of a Pokemon whose appearance strikes fear in its opponents. Thanks for watching, everyone, and as always, if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False Swipe Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content. And in the comments, I want to know, what do you think about competitive Medicham? If it ever returns to Sword and Shield, how would you buff it? Whatever it is, let me know in the comments. Also, thank you so much to our patrons for continued support of our videos, and thank you to everyone else watching as well. And follow my crew on these social media platforms. And that's all I got. See you next time, everyone.